The time has come for policy to adjust.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell signals rate cuts are coming. I'm Lisa Bernhard with Reuters, and here to talk about that is Brian Krawez of Scharf Investments. Brian, what did you make of Jerome Powell's highly anticipated speech today from Jackson Hole in both tone and language?
Yeah, that was a good speech. He had a mix of humor and humility, but he set a clear direction for the future while still leaving room to be data dependent. I mean, he specifically stated that he had, growing confidence that inflation is on a sustainable path back to 2%. But he also said, the time has come for policy to adjust. And he really was optimistic that he believed they could stick a soft landing.
You mentioned the humor. Talk about the emotion and what's going through the mind of a guy like that, because you yourself used to work for former Fed Chair Janet Yellen when you were a student at UC Berkeley, correct? So you have firsthand knowledge of somebody who has been in this job.
Yeah, the Fed has a really tough job. I don't think they get enough, credit for that. Wall Street myopically focuses on the Fed's short-term impact on markets. But, the people that I know, such as Janet Yellen, that work at the Fed, they're very dedicated economists. And unlike most politicians, they tend to be, very academic in nature. This speech, for Powell was probably a bit cathartic. He got a lot of heat when inflation was at 9%, especially given the Main Street and political ramifications, which he also acknowledged in the speech. He noted the Fed's past mistakes, and I thought it was pretty funny when he made a joke about the quote unquote good ship transitory, and he pointed out what he called fellow crew members in the room. In other words, I think he was saying, look, I and my other fellow Fed members are not the only ones that made a mistake here, but ultimately we should get credit because we course corrected and now we're on a very good path towards 2% inflation. Again, I think the Fed has a really tough job, and I think today was a little bit of a humble victory speech, for Chairman Powell.
He didn't specify Fed policy going forward, but do you think that he telegraphed anything about how big a cut is coming?
Yes and no. I think it was pretty clear from the speech that we know that there is a rate cut coming in September. And I also think we know pretty clearly that it's highly likely there'll be 3 more cuts to come. Now, the data could change, obviously, between now and then. But in terms of size, I would say that it's likely it's a 25 basis point cut. There was nothing in the speech to indicate the need for panic. And I think the Fed is just going to gradually cut. They're not going to want to spook market participants, but they also, as he acknowledged, want to make sure the labor market doesn't further soften. So I think what you're going to see is a series of gradual cuts, and eventually the Fed could get all the way down to 3% or even below if they're able to hit their 2% target.
Given his speech, it looks like many investors are expecting a soft landing, and perhaps the Fed is as well. Are you?
I appreciate his optimism, and obviously, I hope he's right. But the fact is, the history has shown it's very, very difficult for the Fed to stick a soft landing. It very rarely happens. You've already seen, massive revisions down in the job market, and yet you've got a really expensive S&P 500. So, I agree with you. I think investors are thinking there's going to be a soft landing, but that's probably not that likely. So we think some caution is warranted for those investors. That doesn't mean you don't want to own stocks, but it means you probably should be looking for those stocks that haven't been as discovered and that are offering better valuations.